there's an idea of
recording in progress.
that the chalomis come from Hirhure Liboy. It could still be a gather of nevuah. We explained it because just like there's different neviim, say nevuah, each one in their own particular language. The same thing you have the cholam is hirhure liboy. That's like the language through which a nevuah that comes higher than him. So it's both mirhure liboy. That's like the language of the navi. The same thing the cholam that has nevuah. That's the language of the person. And the nevuah itself is coming from above. So it's not a stira that in a cholam, it's not a contradiction. A cholam, you could have a revelation from above, and at the same time the Gemara says that it comes mir hure liboy. So now the Rebbe goes on to another thing that the Alter Rebbe says in the Maimer, that the Alter Rebbe said that he's quoting a Maimer of the Alter Rebbe, that the dream can have in it also things asher loy choshav me'olam, that he never thought about before. So, in other words, this must be something higher than that something comes mir hure liboy. It still has to do with his language, and in that way, every navi is different and distinct. Amna mashukasa by Maimer, where it says in the Maimer Sharoim B'chalim, Mashaloi Chashav Ma'ilam, a person could see in a dream what he never thought. Again, the bottom of the second page. Hinezeu inyan naila yoser. This is a higher level than the fact that two neviim do not say the same nevuah, even though it's the identical nevuah. They don't say it using the same language, because each navi, his nevuah, becomes united with his particular mind and his particular expression. So therefore each nevuah uses a different delivery, just like, for example, each Rishon will say the same halacha, the identical halacha in different expressions. What does that the loy chashav ma'olam mean, as opposed to saying that it comes mir hure liboy v'bechinas gili oir shalamayla ma'kelim shaloi? We're talking here about a type of dream that is a revelation of light that's totally beyond his vessels. Therefore, since it's totally beyond him, it's not at all incorporated, it's not at all something that becomes part of him. Therefore, it's possible, or it has nothing to do with the thoughts of his heart, it has nothing to do with what he thought about during the day or during his lifetime, or b'chlal, his language, etc., because this is such a revelation, it has nothing to do with the specific person's own kelim. So then the Rebbe asks, but Lepoil in the Gemara it says differently. So top of page 3, Madi Isa b'Gemara, what is brought down the Gemara, Shein Adam Roya B'Cholim Elam Hirure Libayu. How does the Gemara say that a person does not see in a dream only from the thoughts of his heart? But we said that there's a type of revelation that could be completely beyond the thoughts of his heart. Because Torah speaks about the majority of people. By the majority of people, their dreams are a result of the thoughts of their heart. So, like we said before, either it has to do with the thoughts of his heart, because what the Alter Rebbe said, we brought before from the Alter Rebbe, that for a person to be misakin, the letters that he invested in his thought or in his speech or even in his actions, because letters indicate any type of revelation. So the dreams fix that up, as we mentioned before, or on a higher level of dreams, im b'shvil hakelim linan nevuah, either that, again, he's having, I guess it's not so many people, but still, it still falls into the general category of the majority of people concerning vessels for prophecy. So therefore, those are the categories that we say that a cholam comes, a dream comes only from the thoughts of his heart. Aval yeshna yotzim in a klal. There's an exception on oisnam in Yiddish. that he dreams about something that he never thought about. It's such a type of revelation of light that's totally beyond his vessels. This is not like a nevuah that goes through the vessels of the Navi that's unique and distinct, this Navi over a different Navi, and it's not like the dreams that comes to fix up his own private letters that he needs to elevate of his thought, speech, and deed, but it's completely a revelation beyond anything. That revelation is why the Maimer likens it to a nest. This is also what the Maimer says, that it's similar to a miracle. What's the idea of a nest? That's beyond nature. Because by Hashem, there's nothing impossible. You could have two opposites come together. Nimna nimnois is an expression usually used for a miracle like Mokim ha'aron Eimen Amida, that the location of the Aron in the Kodesh Kadoshim was not able to be measured, even though you could measure the Aron and you can measure the Kodesh Kadoshim, but then when you would measure them both, you would see that the Aron did not occupy any space. So for such a type of miracle, we use the expression Nimna nimnois. Yochol is galus boy ur shalamaylam akelim. Because of this thing that it's impossible to say that anything is impossible by him. That's the literal translation of Nimna nimnois. That it could be revealed in him, a light that's beyond his vessels. It could come down to him internally. In other words, if it's beyond vessels, seemingly it can't come down internally. If it comes down internally, it has to come down in his vessels. So the fact that you could have both, it comes down to him internally, it comes down to his consciousness, it comes down to his awareness, and yet his own thoughts don't impact this whatsoever. The thoughts of his of his mind, the thoughts of his heart, the oisius that he has to be misaking, whatever it is, has no bearing on the delivery of the nevuah, and this nevuah, this revelation, can be from a place that has no connection and doesn't use at all terminology and events and things that went on the person's heart. So now the Rebbe brings another example of where we see this idea of the joining of two things that are like impossible. This is also what he says in the Maimer. That the person sees both true things and false things. How could it be that he sees true and false things together? Either a dream is a true thing, a true idea, or it's falsehoods. How do you have the mixture of both should live together? Both concepts should dwell together. It seems to be contradictory. Just like either the oil comes down into the kalim, or if it doesn't come down to his kalim, it doesn't come down to Pnimius. Either the you could measure the Aron and therefore it takes up the space, or it doesn't take up space but you can't measure it. But you have a combination of both. The same thing over here, you have truth and falsehood joined together. How could that be? This is also when you combine two extremes in an impossible situation that for Hashem, it's not impossible at all. Now in the footnote he says that the connection with the next part was not very clear. So here the Rebbe is going to go into another point, a completely different point that the Maimer the Alter Rebbe about dreams speaks about. Second paragraph on the third page. In the first Maimer, following the Maimer titled the Vanesha Bagoy, like we said, there were two Mamorim following that Maimer and that manuscript, that book in Alter Rebbe. He begins with the complaint of the Malachim to Hashem. When Hashem wanted to give the Torah to the Jewish people, the Malachim said, place your glory upon the heavens. Who is man that you will remember him? Why do you give importance to man to give him the Torah? And Hashem's response to that complaint, there was a whole story with the Medrash and so on. He told Moshe Rabbeinu to answer them. But the Medrash also says, Hashem stretched out his small finger amongst these malachim, and they were burnt up. That's what's brought down the Gemara Sanhedrin. But tzarich lahavin, we need to understand what is the response for their complaint, the fact that he stretched out his small finger and through that they were burnt up. Obviously, when Hashem does something, it's not just a matter, okay, Hashem was punishing, let's say, the Malachim for being rebellious and being so questioning. There must be a specific connection between what they were asking and what that particular thing was. Like Medrash explains what was the significance that specifically these 10 Makis were given to the Mitzrayim, and Chassidus explains what's the idea that Adas Korach was swallowed into the ground, specifically that particular miracle. There's many ways how Hashem can get rid of rebellion. Every single event and every single reaction to something has to do because there's a connection between it. The same thing he's asking over here. How is Hashem stretching out his small finger amongst the Malachim and burning them up a response to what the Malachim wanted, that the Torah should be given to them instead of down here in this world? So the Rebbe continues, the idea behind this is that the levels of lights and vessels in the avoid of a person, that is Chachma Bina Das, and that's a Chayd Yisoid Malchus. It's like almost the two extremes of the Koiches HaNefesh. Shebechinas Nehihem Kelim Lasog Samoichim, the level of Netzach Chayd Yisoid are vessels for the comprehension of the brain. In other words, that there's the level of the mind, and then there's the way it comes down into the vessels of Netzach Chayd Yisoid. In general, vessels are considered incomparable and inconsequential, if you will, and the way of yesh in comparison to like the ayin nature of the lights. The lights is a revelation, kelim is darkness. That's like yesh and ayin. To k'moikin ba'adam, in a similar vein, by a person. When he's working with the external powers, with Netzach Chayd Yisoid, it's incomparable in the level of yesh and ego, and even considered a sin in comparison to his comprehension. In other words, Netzach Chayd Yisoid shows on the level of more like action. The world pertaining to action, it has to do with the extremities of the person and so on. Intellect is completely removed. It's completely a spiritual state. So he says, for example, like a servant that serves his minister, serves his officer, serves his master. Because of the fact that the servant does not comprehend the greatness of this officer and master, like the master himself perceives his greatness. That his service is like a sin in comparison to the comprehension of the officer. In other words, that because he doesn't appreciate how great the one he's serving is, so his service is going to be lacking. His service is going to be deficient because whatever he does, it's not comparable to what that officer, what that master is, the minister is really truly deserving. And the Rebbe adds to this mashal that it doesn't just mean when the officer and the servant are two separate individuals. Within the person themselves, there's the level of their officer, their minister, and there's the level of the servant. He says in the brackets, we could say the intention over here is Shal Derech Eved v'sar. Just like there is two physical people. One is a servant, one is a minister. Also, the servant himself, his service is in the way of an ego and a sin in comparison to his comprehension. In other words, because I comprehend how great this officer and minister is, my actions should be much more than they actually are, but they're only limited to being action. Move on from this understood, the kol mashemasig yoser sagadlus, the more he comprehends the greatness of the officer, the minister. Not only will that comprehension not cause the person to have an increase in his own ego, because usually, I understand more, I'm more full of myself. Give a look. I appreciate. I understand. I have an intellectual ability over here, but not that way. The more he appreciates, the more he understands, the more he comprehends about his master. But just the opposite. Mitzad hasagas hagadlus, because of his comprehension of the greatness of his master. Year by bittul yoser, he will have a greater bittul in comparison to his master, or in regards to his master. This is also what's brought down in Sifri, that the person Moshe was the very humble. So he says, could be that Moshe Rabbeinu's humility was greater even than the humility of Malachim. So Talmud Loimar, so the Sifri says, no, that's not that way. Comes to teach you, Mikol Adam Asher Pnei Adama. It says that Moshe Rabbeinu was the most humble person from every person upon the face of the earth. Why does it have to say upon the face of the earth? To exclude V'loi Memalachim, that Moshe Rabbeinu's humility, as great as and as humble as he was, it was not as it could not be as great as the humility of Malach. How come? Why was that so? Since Malachim have a much greater comprehension than even a person of Moshe Rabbeinu's stature. Therefore, the Malachim's bittul to Hashem is much greater than the bittul that we have, that a human being is possible to have, even if someone of Moshe Rabbeinu's stature. Based on that, understanding now that the bittul of the Malachim, because they had a greater comprehension in Hashem, was a much greater bittul than any human being can have. So now we can understand, first of all, what was the issue that the Malachim had with Hashem giving the Torah in this world. This was the idea of the complaint of the Malachim. Why do you give any remembrance to human beings? Because a human being does not have so much bittul like Malachim. So first we explained what's the taina of the Malachim. Malachim said the Torah should not be given to human beings, it should be given to us because we have a greater bittul than human beings. And to this, the response was that Hashem stretched out his small finger amongst them, his pinky, and he burnt them up. The tzboy haktano, in Sfiras HaMalchus, his small finger goes on Sfiras HaMalchus. The 10 fingers corresponds to the 10 spheres, and the smallest of the 10 spheres, the least of the 10 spheres, is Malchus. That's why it's called the small finger. He stretched out his small finger. And what's the idea of spheres of Malchus? It's koyach hapoil benifel. Malchus is the source of the life force and energy that's enclosed in the creation. It's the power of the doer of Hashem in the thing that's being made. Now, normally, There's a very limited and concealed amount that all creations get according to what they're able to handle, including the malachim. What Hashem did is he stretched out and he gave them more than what they are usually receiving. Even from this level, the lowest level, Spheres HaMalchus, the level of Koach HaPoel B'Nifel, the level that's normally enclosed in the creations, and that level that usually gives life and vitality to the creations, when it was revealed to the Malachim, more there than their set amount that was normally supposed to be given to them, the normal amount that they usually receive from Malchus. They now had received because Hashem stretched out his finger. So that's what happened, that they became nullified. That's what it means that he burnt them up. The normal understanding of this Maimer Chazal is that Hashem punished them. He said, why are you questioning me? Why are you mixing into my business? So the Rebbe says, no, the idea of burning them up is not an idea of a punishment. It's not a punishment. Ki'im hu inyan habitul, rather it's showing that they became nullified. They were burnt up shemitzad gilu yor, because the great revelation of light. So how, again, is this a response to their query? They had a problem, and they said, we have more bittul than human beings. And therefore, because we have more bittul than human beings, we should receive the Torah. Came the Eibishter and said, no. Here, let me show you what happens when there's a Gilu Yoyer. You come totally in this battle. I stretched out my small finger and became totally burnt up. So the Rebbe says 3 lines in the bottom of the page. This was their response for their query and their question, that what is a person, that you should remember him, place your glory upon the heavens. Shehedru lahem, that Hashem showed the malachim, you think you are more capable to receive the Torah than the Yidden because you have more bittul, you have even a greater bittul even than Moshe Rabbeinu. You also you still have the limitations of the vessels. So you're still going to have a problem about this and about receiving the Torah. Just because you can receive more, you're still not able to receive it. When a greater light shone into the Malachim, like that's idea of stretching out a small finger into them, so the Malachim were nullified from their existence. Ad kan toichen maimer, up till here is the content of the maimer that he was quoting from the Alter Rebbe that brought in this idea about Tana Hoitcha al Shemayim, that this was the idea that Hashem stretched out his finger was a direct response to show them, give a look, you're not really closer to the Torah than the Yidden are. Yes, you have more bittul than the Yidden, but not in the way that Torah that makes you more entitled to the Torah. Tomorrow we'll talk about the idea about why Bechlal do we have to speak about in a negative about the Malachim. Seemingly Hashem doesn't speak negative about any type of creature.